my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys. And today we're talking about Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. You might be familiar with Gillian Flynn. A few years ago she had massive success with her book Gone Girl. It was then turned into a movie that starred Ben Affleck and I think Neil Patrick Harris. And it was just everywhere. You couldn't avoid hearing about it. Everyone was reading it, everyone was watching the movie. It's a whole thing. I've actually never read that book. I did see the movie, but I didn't read the book. Because sometimes when things are so overhyped, it makes me back away from it a little bit. This time around though, I saw a trailer for a TV show when I was watching, I think, Westworld on HBO. And the show is called Sharp Objects. And this, as you can see, is the show's cover of the book. So it's a limited run series. It started, I think, last Sunday. I haven't seen the first episode yet, but I'm going to be watching it, especially now after reading the book. So this book was published in 2006, so it's a bit older than Gone Girl. I think this might have been her first book, I think. And then there was another one in between this one and Gone Girl, and I think it was called Dark Places. But I hadn't read that one either. So this is my first time reading her work. Before we get into the book talk though, I do want to warn you that it's dark. It's real dark. There's not much positive. There's no, happy lessons or feel-good moments. So if you're not, if that's something that's difficult for you to hear about, especially anything relating to self-harm or the murder of children, maybe don't watch this video. I'll understand. But for those of you that do, if you love a good, dark, I'm trying to think of what genre this would go in. I mean, fiction. It's not horror, though there's definitely some elements that are chilling. There's elements of a whodunit sort of mystery because, as you'll see, there are murder cases that are being solved. It's also a book that looks at dysfunctional families, so it's hard to just kind of put it into one category. Let's jump on into it. The book is about a woman named Camille Preaker, and she is a reporter living in Chicago. She works for a newspaper there. She's recently gotten out of the hospital after being put in for psychiatric evaluation and help. She has a long history of being a self-harmer. And what Camille does is she cuts herself. She cuts words into her body, and to the point that, like, she cuts deep enough that once it heals, the scars stay and the words can still be seen. So, and almost her entire body is covered except for her face, and there's a small section on her back that she can't reach. So she was in the hospital getting help for that, and she's been out now and she's in recovery. She's not cutting herself anymore. Now what she does is when she gets the urge to put a word on her body, she'll use a pen and she'll write it on her wrist. And that doesn't quite give her the same, I guess, release as cutting does, but it's a way for her to still get the word out of her without actually cutting herself. So that's talked about a lot, and that's, that's pretty dark. So she's out. Things have been going okay. She lives a very solitary life. She has her friends at the paper, like her boss is someone that she kind of looks up to as a father figure. And, they have a pretty close relationship, and he cares about her a lot. And like when she was in the hospital, he would visit her, and yeah, he just cares about her a lot. But because of the scarring that she's put on her body, she hasn't had a relationship with a man for over 10 years because, of course, she feels like there's no way she would be able to undress in front of someone and show them her scars. So something comes up and she gets sent on assignment back to her hometown of Wind Gap. I think it's in Missouri. And she gets sent to cover it because they figure, well, she's from there, she might have a better chance getting, some info from the locals, being able to sort of infiltrate and get the full story. So what has happened is a little while ago, I think a couple years ago or like 18 months ago, something like that, a young girl from the town who was like 8 or 9 went missing, and then her body turned up and she had been strangled and all of her teeth had been pulled. And then as Camille is heading to Wind Gap, currently another little girl around the same age has gone missing and they're searching for her. So Camille's feeling a little unsure about having to return home. She has a very strained relationship with her mother, and her mother's husband, like mostly her mother, but also her mother's husband. So Camille doesn't know who her father was. Her mother never really gave her any info, so she never really knew. But soon after Camille was born, her mother married a man, and that's who, you know, sort of raised her, although he was always very distant. His name is Alan, and they have a 13-year-old daughter. So Camille's about 30, and her stepsister is 13. And she doesn't really know this girl because she hasn't been home for 8 years, and that's really the last time she saw the stepsister, whose name is Emma. We also began to learn that Camille had another sister, a girl named Miriam, who died from a sort of mysterious illness when Miriam was 13. And Camille wasn't much older, and she hasn't really ever gotten over that. And it seems as though that's when the cutting began, after Miriam died. So she goes home, she knocks on the door. Her mom's real weird. It's just, you get a real weird vibe from her mom right off the bat. And she's like, "Oh, Camille, we weren't expecting you. We don't mind the house, it's a mess. It's not really up to par for visitors." But like, they live in this mansion, and then when she goes inside, like, she looks around, but everything is in perfect order. Like, so it's just a weird way to greet your daughter, you know? So she comes in, she hates that she's there. She describes the words on her body, like her skin starts to burn and crawl, and just being back in that environment she's not finding is very helpful to her. So as the days go by, she finds herself drinking a lot. Like, right from when she gets up in the morning, she keeps a little flask by her bed so she can just sort of take a sip to sort of calm down the feelings and the not wanting to be there and everything else like that. So she starts nosing around and trying to get some info from the police and the townspeople, and she's getting little bits here and there, but everyone's kind of shut off because it's, you know, it's sensitive. She tries to talk to the families of the missing girl and the dead girl, and, you know, they're not really wanting to talk to the media. And then as time goes by, the body of the second girl shows up, and again, she has been strangled and her teeth have been pulled. So as time continues to go on, we get to know Emma a bit, the stepsister, and she is just the worst. She's this 13-year-old girl who dresses and acts very inappropriately. She's constantly being very overtly sexual with, like, adult males, like flirting with them and making them uncomfortable, and she dresses very provocatively, and she's, you know, a stereotypical mean girl at school. She keeps, you know, a close group of friends who do her bidding, and then she's just awful to everyone else. And we get the feeling that Camille might have been similar to that when she was a teenager too, because there's talk of how she was the most beautiful girl in school and was so popular and really got around with the boys. So that's, you know, that's what we learn about her outright. And then from Camille, when she's, you know, sort of reflecting, we learn that she was, you know, always putting herself out there with the boys because she would do anything to make anyone like her. She kind of words it like, you know, Emma will do anything or let you do anything and maybe she'll like you. But with Camille, it was like, I'll do anything or let you do anything. Please like me. So, and then we see this disturbing sort of juxtaposition between Emma out in public and Emma at home. Emma at home is very childlike, throwing temper tantrums, wanting to be cuddled by her mother, often ill, and it's just weird. The whole vibe is very weird. So Camille begins a bit of a friendship with one of the local police officers there named Richard, and they hit it off, and they kind of give each other back and forth Like they'll trade. He'll give her a tidbit of info for her article, and she'll give him a bit of tidbit info that she's learned from the locals, and they sort of help each other that way. They begin having an intimate relationship, which is a bit difficult and a bit strange. And whenever, you know, Richard wants to be with her, she insists that they do it her way, and she keeps her clothes on, and he doesn't understand. So then as time goes by, we learn a bit about the girls, that they were generally kind of mean girls, and like they had a problem with hurting animals, and they would bite people. And so they start to think that maybe that's why their teeth was being pulled out, that this isn't necessarily just some random drifter who's killing these girls, but somebody who knew them and had a vendetta against them. And so the older brother of one of the girls becomes a suspect, but Camille's not really buying that, and neither is Richard. And so they kind of, they keep searching, even though everyone else in the town is pretty sure that it's the dead girl's brother. His name is John. But he's extremely grief-stricken. Like, he's crying in public. Like, he's ripped apart emotionally. And Camille's like, somebody who was guilty wouldn't be like that. And then someone else is like, no, that's exactly how someone guilty would be, especially a boy. Like, he's acting too upset. And she's like, what do you mean too upset? Like, his sister was murdered. As time goes on, Camille is getting more and more unhinged. She's hating being there. She's drinking more and more and more. Every so often she calls her boss back in Chicago, and she's crying, and he's like, listen, if it's too much for you, like, I'm not willing to risk your mental health just for a story. I thought it'd be good for you to go home. If it's not, tell me and you can leave. Like, you do not have to stay there. And she's like, no, I'll stay. It's fine. I don't want to leave. I want to, you know, finish what I started. So one night she's out with Richard, and when they call it a night, she runs into Emma, who's out with her friends. And Emma's like, come with us, come hang out with me. And Camille's like, no, I'm tired, I'm gonna go home. But Emma's very insistent. She's like, come with me, let's do it. So they go, and she does drugs with these kids, and throughout the trip during the drugs, her and Emma kind of bonded a bit, and they talked a bit about, you know, their mother, who they both have a very weird relationship with. And Emma says, you know, I know you think I'm the favorite, but I'm not, even though she doesn't like you at all. And Camille's like, yeah, I know she doesn't like me. And Emma's like, she doesn't like me either, so don't worry. And then when they go home, their mom, the next morning they wake up and they're hungover, and their mom brings them some medicine to take. And Emma just takes it because this is a common occurrence for her with her mom, and just feeling tired and, you know, not wanting to fight. Camille takes it too, and she notices that a couple hours after, she gets violently ill, like throwing up, fevers, chills. And there's something in her that makes her think about Miriam, and how Miriam had symptoms like that. And it chills her, and she starts to go, you know, where you never want to go, and she starts to question, did my mother kill Miriam? What had happened a little bit before is one evening there was a get-together with her mom and some of her mom's friends, and their kids and grandkids were there. And Camille saw her mother, whose name is Adora, with one of the babies, and she's sort of off on her own, not realizing that anybody can see her. And she's rocking the baby, and then for whatever reason, well, we'll find out the reason now in a sec, but a crazy reason, what happens is Adora leans in and she bites the baby's cheek very gently, not enough to leave a mark, but enough that the baby's gonna start crying. And then she consoles the baby. So it's like she goes out of her way to upset the baby so that she can be the hero to console the baby. Like, that's insane. But apparently that's a real thing. And so when Camille takes the drugs that her mother gives her and gets sick, she starts thinking of that behavior she saw her mom exhibit and wonders if what happened with Miriam was an extreme version of that. So she goes to the hospital where Miriam died and she asks to see the records. And in the records, okay, hang on, back it up. I was just getting really carried away and I didn't give a spoiler warning at any point. I didn't break it up. So we're gonna do it now. So if you do not want to know what was going on, who killed those girls, what's the really darkness going on with the Preaker family, click off now because we're gonna get into the final spoilers and how it ends, and it's quite a ride. But yeah, if you love those dark, intense, disturbing stories, I think you would love Sharp Objects. It's well written. Gillian Flynn is a good writer from what I can tell from this. She writes things that are compulsively readable. Like, you can't put it down, it flows well, it's easy to digest. So if you like that, I think you would like this. Okay, let's continue. So Camille goes to the hospital where her sister died and she asks to see the records from when her sister was a patient there. And inside the records, there's a note from the nurse. And the nurse writes in that note that she thinks that Miriam is sick because of her mother. She thinks her mother's the one that's making her ill. She believes that if the child was taken out of the mother's custody, she would be fine. And the letter goes on just to sort of detail that. So Miriam's like, so Camille is like, then why the heck wasn't anything done? So luckily, as luck would have it, the nurse is still working in the hospital. So she goes and tracks her down. And the nurse just kind of says, you know, it was a different time. Nurses weren't taken seriously. The doctors all adored your mother. Like, they kind of had, like, it seemed like they all had crushes on her. Like, they thought she was this amazing mother, and they just wouldn't listen to me. She says, you know, I almost got fired because of this. And Camille is just kind of like, oh my God. And these feelings are confirmed in her. Like, she's like, okay, it was my mother. My mother killed Miriam, and I'm betting she killed those two other girls. She also finds out from the nurse that Richard had been there recently, so she realizes that he was also on the same track. So she goes and confronts him, and she's really upset, and she's like, you were using me to find out what you could about my mother, not just like the townsfolk. And he's like, yeah, it started like that, but I developed a really real feelings for you. And so she starts telling him about Miriam and how her mother's been drugging her and Amma for who knows how long, and her since she's been back home. And he's like, you should have come to us immediately when that started. We could have run tests and gotten proof. And she's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I didn't, but I'm sure it'll happen again. So she goes home, and that night it does. And her mother's just giving to her this whole concoction of drugs, putting her in the bathtub, which is what she does to these girls, stripping them naked, just washing them, rubbing alcohol and rubbing it on them. Just weird stuff, really disturbing. And she feels so sick, and she feels like she's going to die. And she knows that Richard and the police are coming that night to search the house. So she's just kind of waiting for them to get there, hoping she doesn't die before they do, but also kind of being like, she's just tired and whatever happens, happens. So there's just a lot of vomiting, a lot of sickness in the tub. Her mom would empty the tub, fill it up again. And then if she'd vomit, she'd empty it and fill it up again. And then she passes out, and then she wakes up and Richard's there. She can hear her mother screaming off in the distance. And Richard is standing over her in the tub, and she realizes that she's naked, so he can now see all the words carved on her body. And he's like, what is that? Like, what have you done? And it's just this huge thing. And then next it cuts to kind of just letting us know what's happened. Police found all kinds of very serious drugs in the mother's drawers. Horse tranquilizers, seizure medications, all kinds of drugs that if used improperly can cause fevers and dizziness and sweating and vomiting and just all kinds of things. And then all those drugs were found in Camille's system when they tested her. It also lets us know that Adora, the mother, was arrested for the murder of her daughter Miriam, and then the murder of the 2 local girls, Anne and Natalie. Camille's stepsister is put into her custody because they think that would be the best situation for her, so Camille takes her back to Chicago with her. They try to settle into day-to-day life. She enrolls Emma in a very fancy private school, and Emma begins to make some friends. One of those friends is a girl named Lily, who often comes over to their house after school. And Camille really likes her. She thinks she's a great girl. She's smart. She seems like a good influence for Emma. So, you know, she's pleased to have her over. And then as time goes by and Camille and Emma and Lily spend more time together, Emma starts to withdraw until eventually when Lily drops by, Emma doesn't even come out of her room anymore. And so one day Camille asks her about that, and, you know, Emma's like, you like her more than me. Why would I want her coming around here anymore? So, of course, because of the years of abuse that Emma went through at the hands of her mother, she has very, very sick and twisted ideas about what relationships are, about what love is. So Camille is just sort of trying to help her have healthier relationships. She puts her in therapy, etc., but none of it really seems to work. And then one day it is announced that Lily, the friend, her body was found in a dumpster with some of her teeth missing. So when Camille finds out about that, she rips Emma's room apart trying to find the teeth. Because with her mother, they never ever found the teeth. After her mother was arrested, she searched everywhere. She had the cops search everywhere she could think of, and they never found the teeth. Which the police were pretty sure they would, because normally any ritual killing like that, the murderer keeps it as a souvenir. But they could never find it, and then something clicks in Camille, and she realizes that the dollhouse, there's this dollhouse, it was sort of a replica of the home where they grew up, that Emma has, and Emma spends a ton of time replicating the inside to look like the inside of their home. And so Camille is tearing apart this dollhouse to see if she can find anything, and she does. She finds the teeth, not just the few teeth that were taken from Lily, but also all the teeth from Anne and Natalie, because what Emma had done was, in their mother's bedroom, there was ivory floor. And so in the dollhouse bedroom that represented their mother's bedroom, she put the teeth down on the floor to look like ivory floor. So Camille, of course, calls the police, and Emma's arrested, not just for the murder of Lily, but for the murders of Anne and Natalie. It hadn't been their mother, it had been Emma, because she had been jealous of the girls because her mother had been spending time with them. Like, for one, she was a tutor. So Adora had killed her daughter, Miriam, through her mental illness of wanting to make her daughter sick so she could care for her more. But it had been Emma who killed the 2 young girls and took their teeth out, along with her 3 friends. Her 3 friends helped her. And so they were all given sort of psychiatric sentences until they're 18, and then I guess it'll be reevaluated again. So that's how it ends. So then Camille says that, you know, we sort of get her a little blurb from her at the end where she says, you know, she never heard from Richard again, even though she had really begun starting to care about him, but she knew she wouldn't hear from him because he saw her naked in the tub like that and saw all the cuts on her body, and you know, she understood that that was a lot for someone to take in. And then let me just read to you the final sentence here, because it kind of ties it up. As Camille had been spending time with Emma, she, you know, had tried caring for her so much. And so the final bit of the book goes like this. I have dreams of washing Emma and drying her brow. I wake with my stomach turning and a sweaty upper lip. Was I good at caring for Emma because of kindness? Or did I like caring for Emma because I have Adora's sickness? I waver between the two, especially at night when my skin begins to pulse. lately I've been leaning towards kindness, and that's where it ends. So there you go, you guys. Like I said, it's a dark story. There's no happy endings. There's no feel-good moments, but it was a very interesting read, and I can't wait to watch the TV show. Amy Adams, as you can see there, will be playing Camille, so I can't wait to see what HBO does with the material and how close they stick to it and things like that. So that started last week. Did you catch it? Are you planning to watch it? Let me know. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching this. Filming the book talks are always my absolute favorite, so I truly appreciate those of you who watch them and love them. So thank you so much, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.